I'm excited about this bow. I really am very excited about this bow. You know, the real beauty of making a lot of different designs of bows is that as you get more familiar with different designs, different materials, different processes for making bows, you begin to really start to coordinate some of that information, that knowledge, that experience into new designs and new attempts at different designs and etc. And so the bow that we're getting ready to start on this week is going to be the culmination of the bows that I have on my workbench right here. And I'm going to be drawing a little bit of information, not information, but technique or design or some aspect of each bow that's on the table here into the next build. So let's dive into which bows that we have right here. Starting with my Assyrian design bow. And guys, I think if you've been watching any of my recent videos, you know I've got an affinity for this particular bow. Really enjoy shooting it, love the design, it was fun to make, etc. So here is what we are taking from this particular bow. First, the bamboo back and belly design elements. So the bow we're getting ready to make now is going to be a bamboo back and belly. It is going to have a core similar to this bow, and then I am going to incorporate Sias into this next build as well. So those are the elements that we're taking from this particular bow. I understand this particular design very well, and probably done more experimentation with a reflex deflex bow than any other style of bow. So that portion of the designing is going to be a part of this bow build as well. It is going to be deflexed through the grip because I'm going to give a little more girth or thickness to the core lamb, and explain a little bit more with the next couple bows so that you understand where I'm going with that. But it needs to be deflexed to make that a little more safer design, especially since one of my primary objectives with this build is a compact design. So my intention is to make it 62 inches overall length, which makes it 60 inches nock to nock. All right, so this is a tri-lamb bow that I built some time ago. I have taken the handle wrap off of it, and I don't, hopefully you can see it's got bamboo back, a power lamb in here, a core lamb, which becomes the middle of the tri-lamb, another like wedged piece or power lamb that is then glued backwards into the middle, and then its belly lamb of Ipe. So that's the construction of this particular grip, and this is the riser that I'm going to emulate on this current build. So what I can do is get a good deflex in there, but also extend that working limb and that bend right through the grip area. Maybe not a lot, but enough. And so we're going to keep that grip area really pretty small, so to speak, both narrow and thinner than most. And finally, I got a bow up here as a surrogate example, an ASL, bamboo back and belly ASL. This is actually standing in place of the last ASL build that I did with an Ipe core that was a little thicker, and then a belly of bamboo, but more along the lines of what Howard Hill would term as a facing. Okay, so Howard Hill would build his bows in completion, basically in completion. He would tiller them out completely, and then the last step would be to put a face of fiberglass onto the belly of his bows. So it would be bamboo cores, and then fiberglass along that belly. Now the fiberglass was the last application on those bows, and his philosophy behind that was that he's gaining power to the bow by facing it with glass. All right, so what I'm intending to do is get the strength from this particular bow out of the core material, which is going to be just a little bit thicker. So it's going to be a little more on the working side of things rather than just the taper side of things, and then face it with bamboo. So the bamboo on the belly is actually going to be a very thin lamination. That is the whole premise behind the design of this particular bow, guys, and I am really hoping to make something compact, long draw, very efficient, shooting a very fast arrow. Alright guys, these are going to be the materials for this particular bow. I have just some Sapele stock right here. For a core, I have a piece of maple, and you can see it's probably about 1/4 of an inch thick, so it's got some substantial thickness to it for a core lamb, which is really going to be more of a belly lamb that's just going to be faced with bamboo. And then I've got 2 relatively matched pieces of bamboo. So you can see that my nodes kind of fall in sequence with one another. I want to show you what I'm starting with. These would be pieces that ordinarily I would not necessarily discard. I save them for this sort of scenario, but you can see that this piece is on the far end flat on the workbench, but when I bring it to you here, that thing's got some twist to it. And not a little bit. That's a pretty significant twist along that length of bamboo. This other piece, same idea. So it's flat. Bring him up and he just bending out there. So really I wanted to kind of highlight that so that you guys can understand that with proper handling, pieces of bamboo like this can be used in a bow. This is the first step in trying to mitigate the twist in that bamboo. So you can see I have lined up my template to be just about on the flat space on this end, and then almost diagonally across the length of that piece of bamboo to then hit the crown on this side. I've got my taper jig set up to cut to 1/8 of an inch out at the tips while maintaining 1/4 inch here at the grip section. So we're going to go ahead and take this down to size. All right, we got the main limb pieces put together right here. You can probably see the belly lamb right here that has been heat tempered with that torch, and then the backing strip here, and then the core, which has been tapered from 1/4 of an inch at center out to 1/8 of an inch here at the tip. And you'll notice that centered here, it does not reach all the way to the tip of the bamboo. Maybe off screen there. It doesn't reach all the way to the end. Obviously the remainder of this is going to be our Sia. Show you our glue up. Note that the grain is all running lengthwise in all directions. All right, so that is a very important aspect to this piece of wood. This would be the Sia that was used in my Assyrian style bow. If you got the manual associated with that bow, you would see that there was also a second template that's a little bit narrow or thinner this way. And this is the Sia that I'm going to be using in this particular bow. Very, very slight. Really just kind of coming out, you know, to a what would be a half inch thick here. So we're going to have a little bit of material on either side. So that is actually in the end going to be a pretty deep Sia. All right guys, all of the parts are milled out. So we are at this point ready to assemble this bow. The Yeah, this is the culmination of everything. Quite honestly, everything is already, like, the bamboo is pre-tillered and pre-tapered. The core lamb is pre-tapered and tillered. I mean, the taper is the tiller. I have a very thick power lamb that is going to be the belly of this bow, and it's going to give it its deflex. And then I have a thinner power lamb that is going to then be the piece that governs how far out this bow goes before it begins to bend. So this is what's going to, like, I don't want to say mitigate the bend, but determine the bend through the grip of the bow. So this bow is intended to bend through the grip, and of course it's not going to bend so much right through this section of the bow. All right. I have Sias all ready to go. I am going to glue those onto the last 3 inches of the core lamination, and you can see when we tapered this, we tapered from 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch out at the tip, and then took the last 3 inches and tapered it down to a feather. And what that'll do is give me a spot with which to glue this on here, glue on the Sias, and have a smooth transition between both parts. I have some EA40 mixed up here. Well, not mixed up, I'm getting ready to mix it up. And my parts have already been degreased. All right, so I have taped off the parts, you can see, on the glue edges, but we don't want a bunch of glue getting all over everything else, because we still need to then attach these pieces to their back and belly components. And we only need the parts to take on that wet appearance to know that we've got epoxy coverage. All right. I'm going right up to that tape line. I'm going to apply the same glue on the opposite side here. This surface is what's going to be attached to my backing strip. Okay, so the pieces should go on the back of the core, or the core piece that is going to be attached to the back. This is where the plastic then comes into play and goes over our glue joint. And then I want you to pay attention to how I clamp this together. Okay, I've got high density foam. These are like pieces of the foam flooring. All right, the little floor tiles you'll put in your gym. And I am going to clamp into the base right there. All right, now I've got everything situated on the bench top here. Oops. Try and keep everything straight or in alignment, say, on the same plane. And then I'm going to duplicate that down here on this end. Last little bit of alignment here. And then we are going to let this set. Just going to go on record saying this right now, that I am a little bit worried about how stiff this bow is going to be. All right, guys, I am going with the better safe than sorry scenario here. I went ahead and steamed in some deflex into this core piece. You really have to exercise patience, and this is the toughest part of builds like this, is cure times, drying times, steaming times, those sorts of things. Here we are. Again, I'm gonna wait. It's not been allowed to set for a super long time. It is a small thickness board, so it did not take long for it to cool down. And it's not a ton of reflex, but as I mentioned, it's going to be enough such that it's not going to have to bend or work hard to match this riser piece right here. And as a matter of fact, it's almost exactly set to that angle, which is going to work out perfectly, because the idea here is to encourage bend through the grip. So I don't want to have any more stress going through there than just static, right? So it's not already pressed into shape, or it doesn't have to be pressed into shape, rather, it's already in shape with no force needed to get it there. Getting ready for the second stage of this glue up, which would be the whole core. Now that we've got the SIAs in place, and I am right now just degreasing all of my parts. And guys, if you haven't seen my video on gluing procedure, how to laminate successfully, I'm going to put a card right here in the video that you can check out. I'll put a link in the description as well. All good, just a good practice. It's 9 steps. I know 9 feels like a lot, but it's not. When it comes time to having successful glue ups. Here's the finished glue up. A couple specific items of note that I want to point out. It's hard to tell through the grip area, but I made sure not to overlap my inner tube in through here, at least when wrapping the main 2 laminations, similar to like what you see here, just kind of candy cane striped, a little tighter in through the riser area, and then stretched out again on the other limb. And you'll notice that we're doubled up on wraps in the very, important areas where there are actually 3 pieces to the glue up. So where the riser is and where the SIAs are. Now, that having been said, that provides a nice flat surface for me to then put onto the jig here. So there's no chance for twisting at the grip, since everything is a single layer. It's smooth to the belly, or to the back side of the boat. So it's been actually 2 days since I glued up this blank. I want something that's going to be very lightweight before I put a backing on it, because a backing strip will add an awful lot of resistance to any bow, especially when it's glued up in reverse tension. Here is the initial glue up, actually the second glue up, and got some pretty decent glue lines going on here on my backing. If I line this up here, I did go ahead, I marked off, you can see I marked off right here where it's kind of into the transition into the SIA, so it's not going to affect the tiller of the bamboo backing, right? So I'm going to get good bend through the working limb, but it's very, very thin right out here, so it will more easily conform to the front side of the SIA, right? And I stand a better chance of getting a good tight glue line Here's the final glue up, or final shape, I guess. And you can see it's got quite a bit of reflex to start. Now, some of that will come out when we take it out of the mold, because we're only doing a single glue line here, at least for the moment. And I don't mind telling you guys, I was wrestling this thing quite a bit, and started with much higher props right here. So these are only like 4-inch props, something like that. I had them on this originally, and started looking at the shape of what it was going to give me and thinking, good grief, I'm going to have a real hard time tillering that, or more specifically getting it to weight, because if you got way too much reflex, it's going to preload way too much, resistance in there. And so the center is pressed down and the tips are pressed up. So when this comes out of the mold, the center should pop up some and the tips should pop down some. Bring this into a little more of a kind of a graceful deflexed and reflex design. All right, that held it held some good reflex. Let's see what happens to our deflex here. All right. Yeah, it popped back up a little bit. Not a ton. Not a ton. This isn't an accurate reading of deflex because I'm sticking out a little bit on these tips, but some pretty decent deflex, or reflex rather. Got most of the plastic remnant off, shaved down the hangovers here at the tips, and looks like initial glue up has us right at 2 inches of setback. I'm good with 2 inches of setback. Feeling a little on the stout side now, but I left everything full width, at least as far as the core and the SIAs are concerned. So there's a lot to trim off right here. And something to consider if you're going to attempt to do this at home, and I'm going to put that in the build guide that I'm doing in conjunction with this bow, and that is to put your backing on and trace it out. And that's how I had done the Assyrian bow. Like I traced the shape of the bow onto the core and pre-cut the core. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I've got some suspect glue lines. Well, I take that back. I really only just got one suspect spot. It's probably going to be fine in the end, but you can avoid a lot of that if your parts meet, a little more in line than like this. Like if you can see the width of the SIA in comparison to the width of the bamboo backing, there's quite a bit of gap, or not gap, but width difference there. Now this is going to be trimmed way down. So the likelihood of having any problems on the edges of these glue lines is pretty poor. But I like to remove all possibility when I'm building my bows. In any event, as it stands now, everything looks okay. Still got a little more cleanup to do before we give it a full assessment. Here she is all cleaned up. Everything seemed to go together really pretty well. Have like a little bit of a hairline. It looks like a gap in the glue right in here, but I think that's more of like a crowning effect on the bamboo itself, because when I probe into that, it's not deep at all. And I feel like once everything gets narrowed down, that will probably go away. In the instance that it does not, however, we'll be able to fill that void with some quick set epoxy or super glue or something. It is in a very non-working portion of this bow, so that's going to be easily mitigated. The sections right here through the grip turned out really well through the riser. So as far as the lamination process is concerned, we're in good shape. We're good to get started here with tillering, and I'm really liking the shape, number one. I like the way the riser came together. That's going to be really a real comfortable grip. And yeah, gotta let this thing finish curing completely, because I got into it just a little bit early. But the resistance on it, I mean, just cursory check, feels like it's going to be right where I need it to be, to just get everything shaped out and do the fine tillering with this bow. So guys, our blank is done. From this point forward, it's all about the tillering, and we will get started on that process next week. So thanks for joining me this week, and I will see you next week.